Welcome. Wednesdays are going to be my best attempt at story time, where I just share a story from my day-to-day, my past, my history. I let you know things that I've learned along the way. Or if any of those stories are too emotionally bearing, or I just don't feel equipped to talk about something that's salient at the moment, I'll do a product review. I'll pull out something that I use in my day-to-day, kind of like the High West bottle here right next to me, literally the best company for bourbons, ryes, and whiskeys that I've discovered across last year. They have taken my attention away from Kentucky for the time being, which is shocking. I'll pull out an item and have a conversation with you. This video, however, is going to be story time. I'm going to talk about and reflect on and reminisce on how I became a wedding photographer. I shot weddings for about 6 years of my career, maybe a little bit less. My busiest season was 42 weddings in 9 different states. That was when I was moving from Kentucky to Washington, D.C. My ex at the time, or my girlfriend at the time, was working on her PhD, and so I was transitioning regions. I was rebuilding a wedding business that had been successful in Kentucky up in the Maryland, D.C., Virginia area, right? And so I kind of double dipped in both marketplaces, established relationships, built connections, and by the time I'd moved up there permanently, I had a full season booked up in the DC area. I've probably shot a couple hundred weddings, if not a touch more. I think I've been a reasonably successful wedding photographer. I've enjoyed every step of the way to the point that I still, to this day, do and shoot and give away weddings as just a gift to friends and family and people that I care about. And I love being in a position now where I can confidently say that I'll be your wedding photographer. I know I'll provide you with the best possible product you're going to be able to get, but I don't have to justify the price or convince you or try to talk you up or do a sales pitch. It's not my hourly. It's just something that I enjoy. And so, in this video, let me take a sip of my old fashioned. Oh, yeah, I've already mentioned it, but I always pair these story times with a bottle of bourbon when I can, and this High West whiskey, this double rye right here, is absolutely delicious. I know it's a little sacrilegious to mix it and make an old-fashioned out of it, but I promise you the majority of this bottle was cleaned just from sitting around the table drinking it straight, and I like a good old-fashioned. That being said, maybe I should do a video on how to make an old-fashioned one day. That being said, wedding photography. How did I get into it? And for those of you that are just clicking on the channel because you're interested in becoming a photographer or a wedding photographer, here would be my recommendation. I'm going to add in some elements to this conversation about steps that I would take if I was just starting out, or let's say if I was rebuilding my career from ground zero right now. I became a wedding photographer because back in college, I had a client that was under the impression that I knew how to do photography and videography work, and like any doubting college student who doesn't have much money and is reasonably artistic, I affirmed that I absolutely could figure out how to do photography and videography work. And so I took a contract, used that money to buy a camera that I then shot that contract with, and that sort of started this spiral of my venture into the photography and videography world. But wedding photography specifically started when I built a relationship and got offered to shoot a wedding from one of the female photographers in the Kentucky area that I was in. She was absolutely remarkable at what she did, and I wanted an opportunity to learn and train and sort of grow as a photographer alongside her. I also reached out to another gentleman. He also ran a photography business, so both of them, Kendra McCullen and Adam Pageant, were both kind of my initiation into wedding photography. But here's the tricky thing. I ended up booking, from their recommendations, solo weddings as an independent lead photographer for only $500 or $800 a piece, so not what you'd normally charge for wedding photography. I ended up booking some lower-end weddings, some more budget-friendly weddings, before I ever second shot, which was probably not the right way to get into wedding photography, but it certainly worked for me, and I had to go online, do a ton of research. I didn't even know what a wedding was, if I'm going to be honest. When I first started out, I had a conception of like 2 people joining hands, thou shall forever, and I do. But there's elements of a wedding day that you have to be familiar with as a wedding photographer. The first kiss, the march down the aisle, the position that you need to be in when the dad hands off the bride to the groom and goes in for that handshake or potentially the hug. You need to understand that the bridal party and the groomsmen are potentially going to come from two different areas and where they're going to stand because it might block some of your cameras. You need to be ready if they're doing a bouquet toss or releasing birds to fly off into the sky. You need to know how to approach and engage with people, how to interact with people and get them to smile because no one likes being in front of the camera. And I knew none of this when I first started. Now, I've learned some tricks along the way. I'm certainly better at all of that now, 200 weddings in, but as a brand new fledgling wedding photographer, I really should have started out as a second shooter before anything, but I didn't. And so what were those first weddings like? What were the first approach? Well, I made sure that I had a full frame camera before I ever did my first wedding. I upgraded to a Canon 6D at the time. I did have, I believe the first wedding I didn't have a 7200, which was probably an oversight, but I just didn't have the budget for it. By the second wedding, I certainly had a 7200 2.8 for the Canon, which is going to be your universal. I mean, I use a 24 and a 7200 for almost every single photo I take on a wedding day. Sometimes a 35 gets mixed in there. I really don't like the focal range of a 50, but I'm getting into nerd photography gear stuff at the moment. And I showed up and just decided to engage with people. I kind of knew the flow. I knew I had to be confident. And I just tried to keep an eye out for everything that was happening and shoot as much as possible to cover and capture and tell the story of the day. Right? If you had to flip back through a reel of what happened on the wedding day, imagine all the little images and the steps you'd want to notice along the way, the things you might notice or miss when everything's blurring by. The flower girl sitting there next to the chair holding her flowers up, or the petals strewn down the aisle. The wreaths and ornaments and wedding rings and gown hanging by the big window, or that moment that the mother does the last stitch on the back of the wedding dress. All of those are little details that you just have to keep your eyes open. Being a wedding photographer is a luxury in some ways. You have the opportunity to watch, to observe people, to understand why weddings mean something. It's the combination of the couple and their story coming together, but it's also just a celebration. It's a party full of people that love each other, full of family and friends that have taken this one moment aside to spend time together and celebrate and be in each other's presence. And at the end of the day, at the end of the night, it's also just a big party. And you as a wedding photographer get the chance to be there, to watch it, to capture and tell those emotional moments and those important stories. And for 80% of the day, your job, your role is going to be always around but never the feature. Never capturing or taking attention away from what's important. That deep breath in, that moment, that sweet little hug or kiss on the cheek, you get to take that picture without initiating or engaging or making it awkward, right? And so keep your distance, but getting close. It's one of those things that those telescopic lenses do so well. You can observe, you can capture the story without being up close and in everyone's face. So how did I become a wedding photographer? In a lot of ways, I stumbled into it. I started off doing photography and videography, writing for the school paper, and I found out that there was money in the wedding industry, and yeah, there is. There's a ton of money in the wedding industry. I might do a video at some point spilling some of the secrets and explaining wedding photography and wedding videography prices to an audience of people and how you can maybe negotiate to get a better deal. That would be interesting, maybe a popular video. But I ended up stumbling into it. I ended up saying yes to opportunity. I ended up accepting a few weddings that were lower end and seeking out opportunities to second shoot with people that I respected in the space. Another, male and female wedding photographer in my area. And I always kept pursuing and seeking good opportunity. And then I just studied. I did my research. I decided to care about people. I invested in new gear, new equipment, and did my best to mimic and copy as many shots that I liked online as I could until I had my own style, until I understood what it was I was doing. I just figured that I would flip through an idea list and frame the groom up in that direction, or take the bride over next to a wall and have her, drape her veil and then let it fall. There's a lot of things that you can do that look good just because they look good, just because they're good forms for the human body to pose in. There's good pictures to take, and you do have to know a bit about framing and photography, and there's a lot of stuff you should learn before you dive headfirst into wedding photography, because it is, portrait, event, fashion, beauty, still life, nature in some regards, depending on what type of guests they have that visit. I have had dogs, I have had cats, I have had horses. I have not had an elephant, which is the one thing that I really wanted in my wedding photography career. I've even shot weddings at a petting zoo with goats and llamas. So there's a lot to experience there. I guess finally, for those of you that are watching, to find out some tips and tricks to become your own photographer, to maybe start pursuing the wedding photography world, I probably have 3 tips that I'll turn into a larger video at some time down the road. And those are going to be, first and foremost, if you want to be a wedding photographer, do your research. Understand the highs and lows and the key moments throughout the wedding day. Understand the people that you're shooting. I've shot, classic Western weddings, backyard Appalachian weddings, Catholic weddings, Indian weddings, even a few African or African American weddings. Not African American, straight African weddings. They all have their own cultures and traditions and elements that go into what makes a wedding special. From different religions, all the way from faith-based, Hindu and Muslim and Christian, all the way over to non-secular based. Like I shot a wedding that was at this giant observatory, and the religious tropes were replaced with the ideas of God and universe and our position on this little floating globe, and capturing and knowing how to tell those stories was important. So find out who your clients are. Find out who your demographic is and understand what matters to them, because at the end of the day, you're telling their story and it is an honor to do so. Once you're prepared there, start researching and practicing all the different elements that go into wedding photography. Understanding human posing, interaction, portrait photography, still life, all those things that I listed earlier, you have to know those. And you can practice those with friends, family, at home, doing them yourself, researching online. All of that is stuff you can learn before you ever shoot a wedding day. And the more comfortable you are with those elements, the better you'll be able to manage the chaos of the wedding day. Finally, look for opportunities to second shoot. I know it doesn't pay as well and time is always of the essence, but second shooting is an invaluable opportunity to do 2 things. Get your feet wet. Start learning how to shoot, how to interact, how to approach with a degree of confidence that is of value, of immense value on the wedding day. You can ruin a wedding if you are a photographer that doesn't know how to engage, interact, or just be there for the client. If it's raining outside, what are you going to say, right? The couple planned for this perfect, beautiful, sunny day, and it is pouring right now. No, really, right now. Tell me what you're going to do to calm my nerves. If you didn't have a good answer, you have a little bit of learning to do before you're going to be a wedding photographer, because there's so many incredible and horrible things that happen on a wedding day, and your job is to be calm and consistent. Your job is to look the couple in the face, the bride, the groom, whoever's freaking out, the mother of the bride, pretty common, and tell them, yeah, it's raining, but look, cloud cover is really the best way to do photography anyway. You see, it softens the light and makes everyone look beautiful, so if the rain slows down, it's going to be the perfect day for shooting. And here's an incredible thing. If it is raining outside, I'm going to take a flash, I'm going to pop it up behind you, I'm going to freeze those raindrops in the sky with an umbrella being hung over you. You've seen those pictures, right? Where it looks like there's streaks of lightning falling from the sky. I couldn't do that if it wasn't raining. So here's the cool thing. This rain is actually an opportunity for us to capture an incredible photo. And it's going to be amazing. Just you wait and see. I hope it continues to pour for the rest of the night, because it's going to be so good. I'm going to go get set up for that. There you have it. From there, you can move forward. Rain still isn't perfect, but I'm excited. I have an answer. Nothing's ruined. You can move forward with the day. So, this video is all about how I became a wedding photographer. And to be honest, I just sort of did. It's not a very satisfactory answer. I know it doesn't answer a lot of the questions, but I pursued opportunities. And in photography, wedding photography is one of those things that you just kind of get funneled down into. But the important thing is why I am still a wedding photographer. Why I still enjoy it, right? I hear so many photographers that are burnt out on weddings that are grateful I was able to move past them. And I'm still sitting here going, I don't know. It's some of the best experiences I've ever had as a photographer. I love being the conductor. I love stringing everything together and knowing that I'm capturing the images that get to tell this story. I love getting that perfect shot on the day and flipping the camera around to show the couple and just having them go, oh my gosh, we're so glad we have you here. I love making people smile, calming their nerves, and making them not scared of a camera on a day that is so immensely important, because almost everyone nowadays is. Everyone sits with their cell phone trying to get the worst picture of you to put up on social media as quickly as possible, and you never look good, and everyone always makes fun of you, and it's not a fun environment. I get to be on the other side of the camera. I get to make you laugh. I get to help you forget that what I'm doing is taking your photo, and then when I show you the photo that I just took, you feel like a badass. You feel like $1,000,000. You look more handsome, more beautiful, more stunning, more powerful than you've ever looked in your life. And the best part of it is, there's 1,000 other photos that you don't get to see on the wedding day that I captured. I captured that moment that he whispered something in your ear. I captured that tear falling down your mother's face as she looked at you coming down the aisle. I captured your dad for the first time in 5 years smiling on camera, and he doesn't even realize that I did it. Or he did, because you challenged me to make him laugh, and I did everything I could up until, and maybe including twerking, to make sure that he cracked a grin. It's not important why or how I became a wedding photographer. The important question is why I still enjoy it. And it's because it matters. It's not about the union and the couple, even though that element is beautiful. Zoom out a little bit from that. It's about the family. It's about the day. You throw and host and invite this party of people to come together because they love you, because you care about them. It's a celebration of people that will never be together in this same way again. From car wrecks to brother's death to sickness in the family to a worldwide pandemic that fucking shuts everything down. This group of people on this day will never be here together in this same way again. So what I do, if you're watching this, becoming a wedding photographer, what you get to do is you get to capture and tell and carry on those memories. And guess what? That matters.